condense down into g plus t squared over t squared plus 1 squared. And then here I can combine this. I know that's going to be t squared squared is to the 4th power minus t squared minus 1. That squared is going to square the denominator here as well. So in order to combine these fractions, I need to multiply that by another t squared plus 1, both the top and the bottom of that. So that ends up being, minus t squared minus 1 times t squared plus 1. Okay. Whoops. Okay. And that's going to be t squared plus 1 squared. Alright, from here, I don't know if you can see, but so t squared minus 1, t squared plus 1. I'm just going to rewrite that because I'm trying to do this with enough room. So it's t to the 4th minus 1. Okay, t squared plus 1, t squared minus 1 factors together to be t to the 4th minus 1. So t to the 4th minus t to the 4th plus 1. So that's going to end up being just, that's just going to be 1. Alright, perfect. Okay, now from here, I'm going to take the square root of both sides. So this is going to end up being the square root of 1 over t squared plus 1 squared. So go ahead and say this is actually plus and minus. So it's going to be plus and minus the square root of 1 over t squared plus 1 squared. And now this side is going to be g plus t squared over t squared plus 1. Since I took the square root of that side. Okay. So now I've pretty much got the answer, but I'm going to have to like get way down here. So g is equal to negative t squared over t squared plus 1. Plus and minus the square root of that, but we can see that square root is going to just it gets you take the square root of the numerator and the square root of the denominator. The square root of the denominator is just t squared plus 1, so it ends up being plus and minus 1 divided by t squared plus 1. Is that still visible? Okay, good. Okay, so from here we can go ahead, and these have the same denominator. We can just combine them. That's g is equal to so g has two cases actually. I wonder if I could just write it over here. That'd be okay. I think it'll be okay. So I'm just going to write the two cases of g right here. So g is equal to negative t plus 1 over t squared plus 1, and g is equal to negative t minus 1 over t squared plus 1. I'm sorry, that's negative t squared. What am I doing? Negative t squared. Okay. So now you can see if I factored out a negative 1 here, I would have g is equal to negative 1 or negative times t squared plus 1 over t squared plus 1, which is just -1. So that's g is equal to -1. That's what I predicted one of our answers would be. But we're concerned with the answer over here, not quadrant. So it's going to be this one is the one we're interested in. So this is actually just, we can see this is being 1 minus t squared over, I'm just going to flip it because it looks better, 1 plus t squared. 1 minus t squared over 1 plus t squared. That's what g is. Alright, so now the goal is kind of complete. This is what I was doing all this algebra to determine. I was finding g in terms of t. T being the slope of that line. Okay. So now the question is, can we use this to find h? And actually we can, because we have h in terms of t and g already. So I'm just going to erase all this and rewrite what we had earlier over here. Alright, so this is definitely going to be one of my longer videos. Sorry about that. Okay, so I know t is going to be h over g plus 1. That was the slope originally. So I know h is t times g plus 1. And here I have g in terms of t, so I can just say h is t times 1 minus t squared over 1 plus t squared plus 1. That's h. Okay, so that's 1 minus t squared. I might as well show the step instead of skipping. 1 plus t squared over 1 plus t squared. Okay, that's just 1, right? That's all I did there. Was I turned that 1 into that so that I can combine these fractions. So that's going to be 1 minus t squared plus 1 plus t squared divided by 1 plus t squared. That's t. Okay. So I have the t squared minus t squared, and so this just becomes 2 divided by that. So it's just 2t divided by 1 plus t squared. So that is what h equals. Alright, so that was the goal of this video. I wanted to find g and h in terms of t being h divided by g plus 1. Okay, this is a really important formula because, as I was saying earlier, this is how we parameterize these, how it's parameterized in terms of that slope. Well, it's useful for many things, and I'm going to demonstrate those things in the next videos.